Imagine you're on a plane, and the pilot makes an announcement. We're cruising at 500 knots. Or you're watching a ship's navigation screen, and it shows speed in knots instead of miles per hour. Why not just use mph? Why use a completely different unit? Today, we're uncovering the fascinating reason behind this old but still important measurement. First, let's understand what a knot actually is. A knot is a unit of speed. 1 knot equals 1 nautical mile per hour. But wait, what's a nautical mile? A nautical mile is slightly longer than a regular mile. It equals about 1.85 kilometers or 1.15 miles. So when a plane is flying at 500 knots, it's actually moving faster than 500 miles per hour. So why not just use regular miles? The answer goes back hundreds of years, to the age of sailing ships. Before modern technology, sailors needed a way to measure how fast their ship was moving across the ocean. But they didn't have GPS or speedometers. So they invented a clever method. Sailors used a tool called a log line. This was a rope with knots tied at equal distances along it. At the end of the rope, there was a piece of wood called a log. Here's how it worked. They would throw the log into the water and let the rope unroll behind the ship. Then they used a timer, often a sandglass, to measure how many knots passed through their hands in a certain amount of time. The number of knots counted told them how fast the ship was moving. That's where the term knots comes from. But there's a deeper reason why knots are still used today. It has to do with how we measure the Earth. A nautical mile is based on the geometry of the planet. Specifically, 1 nautical mile equals 1 minute of latitude. Latitude lines are the horizontal lines you see on a globe running east to west. Because of this, nautical miles connect directly to navigation. This makes navigation much easier. If you know your speed in knots and your position in latitude and longitude, you can calculate distances accurately. Everything matches up perfectly. Now think about ships and planes. They don't travel on roads. They move across oceans and through the sky, where there are no physical paths. Instead, they rely on coordinates, latitude and longitude. Using knots makes calculations simpler and more precise. Another reason knots are used is global standardization. Aviation and maritime travel are international. Planes fly between countries. Ships travel across oceans. Using a universal system helps avoid confusion. Knots and nautical miles are used worldwide, making communication consistent between pilots, sailors, and control centers. Knots also work better with navigation tools. Maps used in aviation and marine navigation are designed around nautical miles. So if a pilot sees a distance on a chart, it directly matches their speed. No conversion needed. Let's take an example. If a plane is flying at 300 knots and needs to travel 600 nautical miles, it will take about 2 hours. Simple. If we used miles per hour with nautical maps, we'd constantly need to convert units. That would slow things down and increase the chance of errors. Even modern GPS systems still use knots. Why? Because the entire navigation system is built around it. Changing it now would create confusion across industries. So why do ships and planes use knots instead of miles per hour? Because knots are directly connected to the Earth's geometry, making navigation easier, more accurate, and more consistent worldwide. What started as a simple rope with knots has become a global standard. Next time you hear a pilot or captain mention speed in knots, you'll know it's not just an old tradition. It's a smarter way to measure movement across our planet. And now you know why we still use knots today.